Thanks for joining us today for our conversation with Apollo Julius, Director of Operations, and Kayla Ladd, HR Manager at Wowza and World Concepts, a Jamba and Cinnabon franchisee. We'll be talking about the critical partnership between HR and operations and all the things they've learned to help them scale from 16 to more than 40 stores. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's session. We are joined today with Kayla Ladd, who is the HR Manager at Wowza and World Concepts, a Jamba and Cinnabon franchisee. Kayla is a results-oriented leader with a strong operations background and a passion for people. And one of the interesting things about Kayla is as the company grew and scaled, Kayla actually identified some interesting opportunities for them to really double down on their HR focus, and she built out what the HR function is, and it eventually evolved into leading that. So I'm really excited to talk to her about what she learned around that journey. We're also joined with Apollo Julius, who is the Director of Operations at Wowza. And Apollo got his start in the industry during high school. Apollo, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were there 3.5 years before you then attended the UNLV. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. So you did that. You earned a degree in the hospitality and hotel management. And from there, you spent some time in the hotel industry. Then you came back to become a franchisee at Wowza and World Concepts, which is a pretty exciting journey for you to kind of come back to your original roots. So thank you both for joining me today. I'm really excited about this conversation. For those of you who aren't familiar with this group, they have grown so rapidly and scaled along the way. They had to figure out a lot of the learning curves that a lot of us are probably trying to still figure out right now. So I'd love to spend some time talking about that, specifically around how you scaled. I mean, you started off with a handful of stores and quickly grew that, but I will let you tell us a little bit more about that scaling journey, Apollo. Like what was like the pivotal moment where you guys scaled tremendously?
So there's an ironic story behind all of this, to be honest.
Okay.
When I was working with Jamba in high school, Jamba had actually recruited my father, Panos, to come on board, and he got trained in the store that I worked at. So he was brought on as a district manager. And then I went off to school and did my own thing, and he was able to become a franchisee. And he had grown. He had a few stores in Fresno, California. And then he grew to Arizona, which was when he acquired 4 stores, which are part of the Jam franchise group, which Kayla was a part of. And they built a few more stores in AZ. And then I was actually getting ready to move back to Las Vegas from San Francisco, and Panos came in to SF and presented me an offer to come on board because he wanted to grow and thought I could use the skills that I've learned throughout the years and school to help out. And so when I came on board, we had 16 stores, 8 in California and 8 in Arizona. And since I've been on board, we've over doubled in size. We were able to acquire a couple other franchisees, and it was just one of those things when the opportunity presented itself, Panos jumped on it. It's definitely been quick, and we've all had to learn and grow on the fly, but it's been fun. And it's like what they say, when opportunity presents itself, you just got to be ready.
Yeah. And tell everybody, how many stores are you up to right now?
41. They're all Jambas with 1 Cinnabon.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Well, let's talk about that growth journey, about being ready when those opportunities come, because sometimes I think there's opportunities for us to think, one, we're not ready, or how do I possibly get ready? And a lot of it comes from just being mindful and, to what I mentioned earlier, creating that operational transparency within an organization so you can spot those opportunities when they come. Kayla, you specifically, spotted a really big opportunity within your company and grew into those to fill that role. Tell us about that journey and what you took on there.
Yeah. I mean, like Apollo said, everything happened so quickly. So I was actually on my way out of the industry. I was doing some HR work on the side for the franchisee that was in Arizona at the time. And I had only seen stores close. I had never been a part of a franchisee that grew. We started out, I think, with like 8 stores, and then just over time started slowly closing stores. So I was looking for different opportunity, and then I met Panos, and he told me if I came on board, essentially as his operator in Arizona with the 4 stores, that we would grow, and we would grow quickly. And he was just so passionate about the brand. I loved his background with Jamba and Starbucks and just really solid brands. And so I came on board and we did just that. We grew so quick. And I found myself just handling HR issues while also being, at that time, I was the only operations leader in Arizona. And then we started adding on DMs as we grew. And the DMs were all having HR functions that they were doing along with their main role. And then it just got to a point where, Panos kind of knew it was coming. I think we all knew it was coming and that it was needed to have a dedicated HR department to handle the needs of the business, and also support the continued growth efforts of our business, and make sure that our people were at the center of that growth.
What were some of the, sorry to cut you off real quick,
No,
what were some of the early signals that made you realize, hey, it's time to spin this out and have like a dedicated HR function?
Man, that's a great question. I think I just started taking on when I noticed my role was becoming more about HR items and less about operations, because I had a very solid team under me. So I had a solid team. I think at that point I had 9 locations, and my store managers were just rocking it, which allowed me to take on a lot of HR responsibilities, to where, I just let Panos and Apollo know that, like, hey, this is how I'm spending a lot of my time. And I'm able to do it because I have strong leaders. But if, other DMs may not have that same opportunity, they might not be able to wear many hats, right? They need to be focused on being a DM. So that's when it was a lengthy process. Like, we started talking about it, and probably a year before it came to fruition. And then, there are many things that need to be in place. There were many things that needed to happen before I could step out. I needed to find a replacement. I needed to train my replacement. I needed to make sure that operations were being taken care of as I transitioned into my new role.
Oh, that's awesome. So talk to me a little bit about how, I mean, you said you had a solid team in place.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of things that you saw that needed to happen, right? Like to start pulling this together, which ultimately led you to this path. What were some of the things that you off the bat knew you needed to do in order to help your company scale?
Yeah. So some of the bigger items were just communication to the company about our policies, about our procedures, streamlining our onboarding, and just creating consistency with our hiring and our training, and assisting with recruiting. That was something I did pretty early on. Is I started recruiting at a managerial level. So for store managers and assistant managers. And then as we grew to district managers, Panos and I, it would just be the 2 of us initially, where we were just interviewing DMs. We were lucky enough to grow from within. So all but one of our current DMs has worked for Jamba, at some of them at a team member level. So that's very, very helpful. But yeah, I would say those were the major areas.
That's great. Thank you. And I love that you've had that partnership with them where you could build those solutions together. You said it took some time, but it sounds like you did it right, which is great. So Kayla, you moved into this new role. Sorry to keep harping on your experience.
No.
Well, what was that like to move into that new role, and some of the core functions that you've been focused on since joined that segment of the business?
Yeah, so it was tough because I was a district manager. I was an operations girl. And I loved being in stores. I loved having the performance visits and one-on-ones with my team and getting to know the team. So moving into an HR role where I just don't have the ability to be in the field as much as I had previously been used to was difficult. But at the same time, I was very excited to be able to create. I had so many ideas just coming from an operations standpoint, having been in the store, I saw so many areas of opportunity where we could improve as a company. Like we were doing so many great things, and I wanted the ability to share those great things with the company as a whole, as opposed to them just being at a store level or maybe even a district level. So I think the transition from being out in the field to not out in the field as much was the hardest. But like I said, creating opportunities at a more company wide level as opposed to an individual store level was a huge benefit.
Absolutely. And I love that the track that you took to get to where you are. I mean, I don't know if this is the words you would use, but it's a little bit of a homegrown approach, right? Where you got to see all the different aspects within the business. And you and Apollo had a really nice partnership too. You still do. Don't want to say that you don't. You still have a nice partnership together because within this industry, operations and the people function go hand in hand, right? You can't operate without the people. So, Apollo, talk to me about how this experience was with collaborating and really standing up an HR function to really drive some of the initiatives that you've been working on to allow you all to scale.
Yeah, I mean, it got to that point where we grew so quick that we quickly identified, hey, we need some branches, off of operations, and we also developed a training and development manager too. So not only do we need the HR, but we needed the help with the training piece and kind of building that platform too, because that goes hand in hand with the people side of things. But what I've truly loved about having the HR branch and working with her is we're able to have that structured side. So SOPs, job descriptions, and using different platforms to ultimately streamline things because we are so big that having that many employees just takes up so much time. And so to me, the efficiency and being able to all be on the same page and identify the growth and come up with new fresh ideas, because we're not going to slow down. Our goal is to keep on adding on to this. And so just the collaboration of minds, identifying the needs and them coming to fruition has been great.
Yeah. And I mean, remind us all here. I mean, you have a company of 40 plus stores. How many people is that you're managing?
Right now, so we're definitely not in our peak season, but in our peak season, we were at almost 700.
Wow.
So right now, we're closer to about 600, but we're getting ready to ramp back up. So yeah, there's a big fluctuation in our staff. We're very, we can be a very seasonal brand, which is why we're so happy to have Cinnabon as a part of our brand now to kind of help bring some stability to a previously seasonal business. So yeah, but at our peak, we were at almost 700.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting point that you made there about the seasonality within your business specifically, because I think oftentimes when people think about scaling, they think about it being a very steady, very consistent pace, when in reality, it's far from that, especially when there's seasonality involved, or even some of the natural turnover that happens in the industry.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key things, Apollo, that you're doing to help bring more transparency to your teams as from an operational standpoint to help you all continue to scale?
So we're very transparent with our teams, from the team member to the GM to our DMs. We're transparent with our timelines, with our expectations, with financials. So we have monthly HR and P&L calls with our DMs. We go through the P&Ls, we go through succession planning, and then they take that to their teams, and they have monthly sit downs with their GMs and AGMs and go through the P&Ls, the succession, and so it trickles down. And we want them to run their districts and stores as if they own them. And the only way to do that is to be transparent, show them where every dollar goes, show them where the people go, the turnover rate. There's just so much that goes into it, and if you don't share that and you don't educate the teams, then they won't really understand. And I feel like that's a part of management is, when you first start out, you start out as maybe like an hourly, and you're told about cogs and you have to hit a certain labor. It doesn't really comprehend, and then when you move up, it starts to kind of click more because you learn more about, okay, well, this is why. And then as you continue to move up, you start to really understand, okay, wow, I didn't understand that if we waste this much fruit, it costs this much. And so if we don't teach that at an early stage, we won't be a successful business.
Yeah, and I want to add on that we also have biweekly company calls with all of our locations where we all get on a call together and we discuss operations, we discuss HR updates, we discuss training and development updates, and we do have a very lovely offsite sales manager named Lynette that is just amazing at handling all of our offsite opportunities and creating opportunities for our business outside of the four walls of each of our locations. And then additionally, my little department has just committed to sending out a monthly health and wellness newsletter. So that will include just, right now, specifically updates about COVID and just the updated policies, regulations, our company policies, and then also just some basic health and wellness items for our teams, which also includes mental health awareness, and we share resources for all of those things. So a lot of communication. Jamba as a company is also pretty good at sending out weekly communication. So one of our DMs is responsible for making sure that communication goes out and is posted for our teams. So we use many different techniques to make sure that our teams are involved and stay in the know with what's going on.
That's wonderful. I love the weekly cadence you have there, and then the quarterly planning that you do as well. And what I love about that is that it gets everyone all aligned around what's currently happening across the entire company. In those conversations, do you also create opportunity? And I'd be interested to see how you structure this for your DMs and GMs to get involved and surface things to the top too, whether it's things that are unique to their stores or things that probably need to be solved across the board.
Yeah. We have a whole template for it.
Oh, awesome.
With multiple tabs. And we use Dropbox a lot to share information. So we have, a team Dropbox where all of our resources are available at a store level. And then we have a DM Dropbox that is specifically for, like Apollo mentioned, P&L conversations, HR and succession planning conversations. So we try to have a documentation for all of our conversations. I do have an assistant who we also have Monday leadership calls, which was another thing that we didn't mention with all of our DMs. And she takes notes during those calls and sends those out just so if a member was unable to attend or simply just for follow-up purposes, we try to document as much as possible.
That's great. So let's go back, if you don't mind, just as we're wrapping up here, because I've loved this conversation. Thank you. This has been great. I think a lot of companies hesitate. Maybe they conquered the hurdle of understanding why it's important to communicate with the entire team and get maybe in their minds even over communicate, right? Share a lot of information. But a lot of them might struggle with sharing certain types of information. And one of the things that Apollo talked on is like, hey, we give them full visibility into the financials. That's not always a comfortable place for a lot of leaders to go in sharing that sort of data with leaders for different reasons. So Apollo, if you were to meet someone that was facing that challenge of feeling a little bit of sense of hesitation or had pause about sharing out that data, what sort of counsel would you give them?
Well, I mean, what we show the DMs and GMs is down to the EBITDA line. And it's a very daunting looking spreadsheet, and there's a lot of stuff on there. And it takes everyone a while to kind of grasp it. And at the end of the day, there's the things that you can control and the things that you can't. And what we really like to focus on is just work on what you can control. So labor and cogs and what you spend. Are you spending too much on office supplies? Are you spending too much on uniforms? And that's all spread out on the spreadsheet. And at the end of each month, it's neat to see, the trickle down from when we share it with the DMs and then they share with their teams. Just the eye opening, especially with the newer GMs and AGMs, like, oh my gosh, I just didn't know that paper cost this much. And just seeing the actual numbers to what each thing is. I know a couple of gyms in the past, they would put price tags on each piece of equipment to show the team, hey, this orange juicer is several $1,000, and the team doesn't know, but it definitely opens up their eyes.
Yeah, I think it probably makes them better stewards.
Yep.
Of the equipment from every facet of the business. Kayla, I think you were going to say something and I cut you off.
Yeah, no, it's fine. No, knowledge is power. So, we definitely want to empower our store leaders to own their business. And they can't do that if they don't know what's going in and what's coming out of their stores. So, and you're right about the hesitancy, because it is a very daunting spreadsheet to look at, and you can dive in to find every last penny. So we also include a lot of training with our P&L reviews, which Caesar, our training and development manager, does a really great job at. So training our DMs to first feel very comfortable with digging into their P&Ls, and then encouraging them to spend a lot of time training their GMs and AGMs, which they do that during their monthly one-on-ones. And it takes, some of the GMs, it takes years for them to really fully grasp, the fullness of a P&L, because it can be very complex.
Great. Well, we're wrapping up here. So before we go, though, I love all the tips that you've shared so far and some of the best practices you've had around creating that operational transparency, the opportunities that it's unlocked for you, right? Creating that transparency opened up that ability to spread out those extra branches to help operations really scale up in the ways they needed to. Mm-hmm. But this is the question for each of you, so I'd love for each of you to answer this. Like, if for the people that are listening today, what's the starting point of all the things that you can do to unlock operational efficiency, whether it's through an HR function or through an operational function? So I'd love your take on both. Where do they start today?
I would say you have to believe in it. You have to believe in the brand. You have to believe in who you work for, and you have to believe in your teams. Nothing will get done unless there's that buy-in from everyone. And that comes with the transparency piece. If Panos was not transparent with Kayla years back and had that roadmap, and she didn't believe in him, we wouldn't be here right now. And so he set up that roadmap and that transparency for us, which has led to us being transparent with the rest of the teams. And we're all here because we absolutely love the brand and we believe in what we do.
Yeah, and I would absolutely agree with that. It starts with our people. It starts with their buy-in of the culture and the brand specifically, and just what we're doing every day. I mean, we've had, from an HR standpoint, I have seen resumes that are 4 pages long with just experience in this industry, in the restaurant industry. And I've conducted so many interviews, and people with just so much experience. And one thing that I identified early on in my role is that if the person, sorry, the person can have as much experience, as much knowledge as we want, but if they are not bought into our ideals, our mission, our brand, what we try to do every day, it's just not going to work. They won't be happy. They're not going to be successful. And it's not going to be a long-term solution. So yeah, I completely agree with what Apollo said.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you sharing what you've learned. I've learned a lot through the conversation, and hopefully we can have you back again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks again for joining us. If you enjoyed today's session, please consider sharing it with a colleague or on social. And if you'd like to keep up on the latest QSR trends and best practices, check us out at workstream.us/blog.